You ready?
Hello everyone, my name is Michael McGlathry and I'm presenting my imposter research to you all today. So it'll be a quick session where I'll tell you about my research and then you guys have the ability to answer some questions or ask questions. Alright, so imposter syndrome is a domain of a high achiever. Those who set the bar low are rarely victim to this invasive mental disorder. The imposter phenomenon was described by psychologist Suzanne Imes, PhD, Pauline Rose Clance, PhD, in the 1970s. The imposter phenomenon occurs almost exclusively among high-achieving peoples and most professionals. People can relate to the feelings of individuals suffering from the imposter phenomenon. Conversely, individuals who are unable or unwilling to internalize and accept their success develop imposter syndrome. They often attribute their accomplishments to luck rather than to ability, and fear that others will eventually unmask them as fraud. People suffering from this disorder are usually very accomplished, but feel that they are not as competent as they are portraying themselves. And they have been extremely lucky to have made it as far as they have. Anyone who is achieving at a high level can be affected by imposter syndrome, but women and minorities are disproportionately affected. This is thought to be the result of social and cultural factors that affect women and minorities. The parenting style that a child is subjected to can also affect their mental development. There are three different types of imposter syndromes that will be discussed. I'm a fake individual, the I got lucky, I'm not smart, I just work hard individual, and the falsely modest individual. This experiment will examine the differences between Caucasian Americans and minorities in the United States and who is most affected by imposter syndrome. At the current time, women and minorities are affected by the imposter syndrome more than any other population. Imposters see themselves as unworthy of the levels of praise they are receiving because they do not believe they have earned such recognition based on their capabilities, causing heightened levels of anxiety and stress. Some find it as baffling that most successful people are the ones who are doubting themselves. Minorities affected by this imposter phenomenon understand how others view them, but feel that any recognition that has been falsely given to them may be because of their pervasive stereotypes that they think others may attribute to them. Those affected will contribute their success to a lower standard of elevation or luck often. People that are considered minorities are known for having self-monitor in order to appear acceptable to others. For example, African American person can try to keep their voice low in certain situations to avoid being seen as stereotypically loud, ghetto black person. Lack of internalization of past successes and external locus of control and lack of confidence that they can replace their performance leads to significant amount of fear associated with a focus on impression management and even more self-monitoring behaviors. The increase in visibility can cause a person of color to feel out of place in a professional setting and therefore believe they do not belong. Clance in 1978 first identified the imposter phenomenon in therapeutic sessions with highly successful women who attributed achievements to external factors even in the presence of evidence to the contrary. A female Tuskegee student stated, I was taught I would need to work twice as hard to be half as good. While this instills a good oriented approach within, it also keeps me feeling as though my efforts will never be enough. This is a similar sentiment many high-achieving individuals feel because it may seem as if the higher that you climb, the further away the next step is for you. In professionals, where one sex is predominating individuals, the opposite sex are most likely to demonstrate imposter behaviors. As a woman, you reach a certain point in your profession, you are sure to be the only woman in the room quite often because you still live in a male-dominated society. This can be intimidating and exhausting for women who feel as if they are constantly working to prove themselves to people that may never accept them no matter what they accomplish. Imposter syndrome has been linked to family background. Imposter behaviors in individuals who are first in the family exceeds norms or expectations for success in careers and financial and educational goals are quite prevalent. Imposter phenomenon manifests in college-age students and has been positively correlated to parenting style that a child is subjected to in childhood. Lack of parental care and heightened parental control are related to development of imposter feelings. Many people who feel like imposters grew up in families that placed a big emphasis on achievement. In particular, parents who send mixed signals altering between overpraise and criticism can increase the risk of future fraudulent feelings. In our society, there's a huge pressure to achieve. There can be a lot of confusion between approval and love and worthiness. Self-worth becomes contingent on achieving. Imposter phenomenon is predictive of mental health issues and is concerning due to the rising number of reported suicides. In an effort to keep students safe, a number of colleges and universities have developed programs on imposter phenomenon for students. California Technology and MIT both have instituted programs debunking myths and belonging, helping students identify IP tendencies and focusing on support programs. Overcoming the imposter syndrome requires self-acceptance. You do not have to attain perfection or mastery to be worthy of success. You've achieved any accolades you earn along the way. Just as we may take responsibility for our failure in life, we must also take responsibility for our success. Comparisons are always subjective, often based and rarely helpful. One must internalize validation from others and resist temptations to refute the compliment, whether internally or verbally. The most important part of overcoming fraudulent feelings is to be open to what is going on, because once a person reveals himself, it is likely another person feels the same way. This can cause an environment of support and camaraderie. So throughout our study, we took surveys and polls on different people on how they felt and were affected by the imposter syndrome. Some of the questions asked were race, do you feel like you're successful, are your parents successful, and so on. So through that, we recorded results. In an attempt to obtain information about imposter syndrome in different ethnicities, we distributed an anonymous survey via social media. Out of 239 total participants, 78.2 identified as female and 17.2 as male. 1.3 deferred not to disclose their information. Of these 239 participants, 54.8% were Caucasian, 25.9 African descent, 6.3 Asian, 6.7 Hispanic, 4% Native, 1.3 Middle Eastern, and another percentage identified as other. Through a series of strategically worded questions, the group attempted to figure out what percentage of the total participating body showed signs of imposter syndrome, and if there was any correlation between minorities and the psychological disorder. The second question in the survey asks, do you generally feel that you accomplish goals you set for yourselves? The answer for this question was on a scale of 1 to 5, not being that all 5 being absolutely. The average answer for this question was between 3 and 4. 3 being 35.1% and 4 44.4%. The inability to recognize accomplishments but focusing on goals that have not been achieved is an indicator of imposter syndrome. The 1.7% of participants who answer 1, not at all, to this question would be expressing this characteristic that often plagues those with imposter syndrome.
You have 8 minutes.
Participants were also asked, do they place their self-worth in the opinion of others on a scale of 1 to 5? 1 being no, I do not really care, and 5 being yes, the opinion of others is very important to me. The majority, 30.1% answered 3. 28.5% answered 4, and 22.2% chose 2. The 11.3% of people who answered 5 view the opinion of others extremely important and place their self-worth in what others see. This answer is also a strong indicator of imposter syndrome. The question, do you feel overwhelmed by criticism, is a direct marker of imposter syndrome. The answers were on again a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being not at all, and 5 being yes quite often. 12.1% of participants said 5, saying that they often feel overwhelmed by criticism. This question in particular informs the survey that informs us in the survey that participants are most likely suffering from imposter syndrome. One question later asked was the participants in a multiple choice format. What is your general response to being complimented? 41.8% selected the prompt, it was a fluke, just luck. 49.4% believed the general response was more in line with the prompt, hard work pays off, and 8.8% thought it was easy, I'm just naturally good at this. Hard work, it was naturally good at this, While the last option has a tone of cockiness, but most people went to the answer that effort they put in reflected the result obtained. Those who selected the prompt that it was a fluke showed that they do not recognize their success, and another characteristic of imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome seems to affect those with self-doubt. The more a person doubts their success, the more likely they are to be affected in this particular syndrome. In addition, it appears that minority and women are most likely affected than Caucasians to be affected in this syndrome. For the information we received the surveys, a majority of our participants were female rather than males, and they were also Caucasian rather than minority. Another aspect we could gain from results of the surveys is probably more than half of these people could be diagnosed with the syndrome. Most of the participants felt that their success merely came from hard work, not because they had the ability to get it done. A copious amount of them were also concerned with the opinions of others, and such they gained an aspect of self-worth from the opinions of others instead of internally. They strive to impress others rather than doing things for themselves. A majority of them answered indeed feel overwhelmed by criticism, meaning they allow others to influence how they feel about themselves. Naturally, this would affect their coincidence. So, as presenting my information, does anybody have any questions regarding imposter syndrome?
No. No, you covered it.
No, sir. You did wonderful,
Crystal clear.
No, I have a question.
Okay, one question.
So couldn't imposter syndrome be just like a modest person? Like couldn't a modest person be mistaken for having imposter syndrome? Like, oh, like you know, like I've accomplished something, but I'm not like bragging on it. It's just like downplay it, but it's like no, you haven't.
Well, it's the difference in modesty and having a syndrome. So if you're a modest person, that's natural. But somebody who has a syndrome reoccurringly tells themselves that it's not because of them they're reaching the goal. Like a modest person knows their worth and knows that they've achieved the goal, but yet they won't brag about it to people. So a person with imposter syndrome really doesn't feel like they're achieving anything. That's why they continue to push themselves and rely on the opinions of others.
So would you say that their symptoms would be depression? Could they have depression or anything like that?
Depression could be a symptom because some of the imposter people have studies showing they've committed suicides. So like I mentioned, MIT and Caltech are big universities. So at MIT, all the smartest people in the world technically are there located. And so they're all competing with each other and feeling like they're not reaching any goals. And some have committed suicide in a sense. So depression is a factor of that.
How would you basically relieve that symptom? What would you do to alleviate some of the how do you treat it?
Okay, so some treatments would be first counseling and talking about it. So you have to talk and vent and speak to somebody that suffers from some of those same symptoms from you and other things. So assuring a doctor or whatever the case may be and really expressing, verbally that, you struggle from this. And a lot of people have a hard time realizing it because it's second nature to them. So when it gets time to break, they don't have that person that they should have been talking to about their problems a long time ago.
Is there any early onsets? Is there a certain age that starts, or is that?
Well, no, it's not particularly a certain age. Like we're saying, it's common in minorities and women, and so a lot of times in minorities, we've already have the thing in our mind. We're set back, so that's a characteristic that will start the syndrome. And also a lot of times, like I said, parenting is also involved in how you were raised in a household, where if you were criticized very harshly, those opinions matter to you now. So if somebody, even if they give you a good opinion, it means less because you were criticized so hard when you were little.
Do you think that adds to the basically lack of social mobility?
Lack of social mobility, yes, in a sense, but we all struggle socially sometimes. So it's not like a social struggle, it's just you struggle with this certain imposter phenomenon. You struggle with the reoccurring fact of that you don't have self-worth to yourself. So it's not just questioning yourself occasionally, it's everyday thing. Any more questions?
No.
All right. So I thank you guys for your participation.
No problem.
Have a great day.